right, you guys, I'm here with Valentine Lahey. I've had him on before. He was an astrologer guy, but he's also a psychic, and he does psychic readings and he does psychic training, and he's been kind of training me, and we're going to talk about it today. So, hey, Val.
Hi.
Okay,
Good to be here. Yes.
okay, cool. So, I don't know, like, what's your elevator pitch for yourself? Like, how do you come out with, like, what it is you do?
Wow. My elevator pitch for myself. I'm really pretty terrible as far as the elevator pitch goes.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't know I thought you were an astrologer. I didn't know you were into the psychic stuff till I talked to you for a while.
yeah. Actually, I mean, with the whole, I'll try to just, try to be as succinct as possible. I mean, the whole appeal of it is that I don't have an elevator pitch. That's what I love about doing it. Is I give people very useful readings. That is what I do. I give people communication that they really use. Like it's the way that I kind of set the energy is that it's like what they need to hear at the moment that I tell them, which is very different from doing the astrology where you're looking at sort of what type of person are you, and you can map out sort of a framework for what sorts of things to expect in the years ahead based on the motion of the planets. And it's very, very analytic with all these different layers. And so when I give people psychic readings, it's kind of like going to a movie that you don't know what you're going to see until you sit down in the movie theater. So it's like you don't know what the tone of the thing's going to be or what the subject matter is going to be, except that it's just you. And it's just, it's like different things are happening with different people at different times.
Right.
And so like, it's a really interesting kind of like thing that goes on, like where I'll have a practice of meditation that theoretically I should be doing every day. Sometimes I'm pretty flaky, but I try to keep it going every day so that I'm ready to read people. But I'll call in people that have sometimes things going on vaguely similar to me, or it'll give me answers about things that are going on with me from like several years in the past, or projections out into, like, there's a kind of a link between myself and the people who get readings. That's kind of a weird thing. And I'm sorry if I'm going off in a bunch of different directions right now as I say this, but sometimes people are in like crises. They have like very intense things happening that they need communication about. Sometimes people think they're not in that kind of a space, and then I'll see that there's like stuff happening that they really need to pay attention to. Other readings are more like I'll be validating things about people. Like there'll be all these strengths that people have that they're not really aware of, and that maybe they have anxieties, and they think they're in a space where they can't deal with, and you can kind of show them that actually everything's really cool. They have a lot of, I mean, you never know. It's never really very apparent on the surface. And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you were in your 20s when you went to psychic school, right?
31.
31.
I was 31. Yeah. So
I started
I'm
becoming a flight attendant. That's a weird age to first stuff. Okay, so tell me, like how like as a dude, it's not a thing that you see a lot of, like, straight bro dudes doing. Like, no offense to dudes,
yeah,
but
well, that was my presumption when I went in to learn this stuff. Like when I first, so I learned how to do this at a place called the Psychic Institute, the Berkeley Psychic Institute, which is sort of still going, I think, but it's had a lot of ups and downs, like politically, financially. It's sort of been like, like it, but I think it's managed to kind of eke by. Things got really difficult after the 9/11, the World Trade Center did something very weird to shift the energy. And it seems like we're coming out of that finally, like maybe the last 5 years or so have trended back towards people being very much more open to this information. I think they're doing most of their business online now. Like they're getting people for classes online, which was not really a thing when I was there, which was
yeah,
98.
so you did an in-person training for like a year?
It's basically ends up being 2 years. And then like right after that, I became my my job. I was a teacher there. That was my income, was teaching. So I got a kind of not very big income, but it was a great job. So altogether, it was probably about 5 years that I was really
Involved with that.
heavily involved, and then I eventually moved out of the Bay Area. So that was the main thing.
What I think would be most valuable for people is, I mean, you've told me you think everybody has the ability to be psychic. Right?
Yeah, that's the key thing, is that every human being is psychic. And I feel like people know this. I feel like this is known, you know. I feel like people really have they have a knowledge that this is true.
Yeah, but it's just heavily repressed and
yeah, like for somebody like you, it's no problem. You're like, sure. And then there's people who where the repression and the fear about acknowledging it is really heavy. You know, there's some people, like, anything spiritual is scary to them. Some people, like, you know, where like a tarot reading is scary. You know, there's people who are like that, so they don't necessarily want to go there. But everybody has this ability. It's just part of being a human being. Working with the chakras, right? So there's the chakra system, the system of 7, the traditional system that we know coming from India, right? Where there's the 7 chakras on the spine, the 7th up at the top and the 1st down at the bottom. By focusing your energy in your upper chakras, especially your 6th chakra, you can access your clairvoyance, which is psychic sight, right? So that's really where my training was focused, is on psychic sight, being able to see.
In mind's eye.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to.
Or like, are you saying like you were like, I could see auras, I could see stuff, like fit like with your physical eyes when they're open, or more like?
Yeah, you can read with your eyes shut or open. It's easier, it seems, to tap into it by having your eyes shut. When you have your eyes open, you're kind of reading more from your crown up here. The thing that the chakras that do all the work in doing a psychic reading really is the 6th. That's number 1. Then there's the 7th up here and the 5th. So being able to communicate. There's a lot of people who have a really great ability to see, but they just don't know how to talk very well about what they can see. That's a big thing. It's a big thing. So me being like having an easy time talking to people, being a confident talker, had as much to do with me being a good psychic as being able to see. It's not like I can see better than anyone on earth or anything like that. It's just that I got used to being able to be confident in what I could see, and then talk about the nuance. You know, you're gonna have to be willing to talk about things that are uncomfortable sometimes.
Okay, so you're 31. Like, what makes you go like? I mean, you used to do film making stuff or whatever, presumably before that, right?
Yeah.
So what makes you go, you know what? I'm gonna go to psychic school.
What made me do it was I was living in San Francisco, and I was pretty lost, sort of, in a certain way. I mean, I was working on projects that were very meaningful to me, and so I wasn't lost in that sense. I had like creative stuff that was guiding me that I felt good about, and I had a plan that was pretty well mapped out about what do I want to do to realize these goals and stuff like that. But I felt like you know, I was a little bit off course in a lot of other ways. Like, it was a pretty crazy, you know, I'm 54 now. Okay. So 31, that's back 1998.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it seems like yesterday to me, but that's because I'm older, right? So, you know, for somebody who is 31, it's like 54 seems like it's way out, you know, way far away. So 31 in San Francisco in the 90s, lots of drugs, right? Lots of psychedelic drugs. Like, you can have really meaningful, great experiences through psychedelic drugs, but there's such a thing as having too much of that around you. You know, too many people who are using drugs. And then there's also lots of people around me who were, you know, speed freaks, heroin addicts, all kinds of criminals.
Those kind of drugs. Okay.
Yeah, San Francisco. I mean, I wasn't interested in that, but I was sharing space with lots of people who were in that world, and just in general, I felt like I wanted to separate myself from it because all those things get people into very psychic spaces, but they're not necessarily very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, depending on how a person approaches it, right? So if you have like a ayahuasca ceremony with people that you have like this very focused intention and you go and do that, you're going to probably have some very meaningful experience. But if you're doing ecstasy like twice a week, or some
Oh
people,
yeah,
some
I
people,
mean,
some
I've
people are at the
seen
level of,
people get addicted to psychedelics. Like they
yeah,
say that they're not addictive. I have a
yeah,
friend who's totally addicted.
right. Anything can become addictive, right? So they're like, some people, if you're doing acid like more than 3 times a month, you might be getting a little jaded, right? I mean, like that is just kind of a weird space. So I was just felt like I wanted to shift out of that. So and I had set my intention that I wanted to be somewhere in a psychic community where people were into some
Well,
sort of
did you have like a premonition of some sort? Like did you have
mm,
like did was there anything that validated for you that you would even have this ability?
sure. I mean, okay, everybody I think has experiences that they can point to in their life, right? It just that's what I
Well, I mean,
find.
like I do, but then I know total muggles that I would tell you no.
Right. Well, yeah, it's okay. So thank you for yeah. I mean, deep down, there's kind of no such thing as a muggle. Probably there's just people in denial, about that. There's a part of themselves that they're not accessing. I don't know. I'm
Maybe.
trying to find the right words to say it. I've had dreams, and other people have these things, dreams that come true, right?
Yeah.
As I had one dream that came true, that I can definitely very, very distinctly remember. When I was 13, I had a dream that my mother came to me and told me that my parents were going to get a divorce. Okay. And she was wearing this pink robe. Did I tell you this story already? And she
Oh, you
took,
did.
and she, in the dream, she actually got me out of bed in the middle of the night and then took me down to the basement of our house, which is a really uncomfortable place. It's not like a hangout place.
Right.
And she brought me under this overhead light, right? So that we were standing under this light, and it was like there had this kind of weird ceremonial quality to it, And then she stood in front of me and she said, your father and I are going to get a divorce. In the dream, I was really angry, and I said, I cursed her out. I said, "You're stupid. I don't like you. This is your fault." And I was really laying into her, and she was not happy about it. I mean, I was really blaming her for everything. So I woke up. I didn't feel very good about it. I thought it was probably pretty harsh, a little bit hard on my mom in that dream. So I don't know. It might have been like 3 months later, 4 months later, something like that. And the exact thing happened. She woke me up in the middle of the night. She was wearing this pink robe. She took me down to the basement to the exact spot. And I was like walking down there, and I started thinking to myself, like, I know exactly what's going to happen. Like I knew from the moment she started, she told me to follow her downstairs. So she was taking me down there so that she could tell me in private, so that my father wouldn't hear her and no one else in the house would hear her telling me this. That was why. But in the dream, it was not very clear. But once it happened in reality, I was like, okay, I get why she's doing this. And then she stood me in that exact spot, and she said almost word for word the exact same thing.
Did you cuss her out?
No, what I did is, because I'd had that dream before and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do, I was very mellow and supportive. I was like, it's going to be all right. It's cool. Gave her a hug, all that kind of stuff. And it was like, I was actually very together, and I was like proud of myself that I was nice and that I was supportive, and I was, because that's really what I wanted to do, right? I didn't want to let the negative, the low level shit to take over.
Right.
So yeah. So that was good. And it was like that was like 13 at that time. And then there was a little light that went off. I was like, oh, well, I've got an ability, and I can actually use it in a positive way, because I could go through something twice, right?
Right.
I could have something happen and handle it wrong in a dream, and then it can show me what I might want to do, when it actually happens in reality. So that type of thing has only happened, maybe a few times, maybe half a dozen times that I can remember total,
Right,
where
like you can't control your premonition dreams.
I haven't tried. I've never been a person, I don't know if I'd say I'm lazy, but I'm very free flowing. Like, just the idea of like, oh, I'm going to get real good at this and I'm going to control it. Like, it just hasn't ever been, I'm just not that type of person. I might be able to. I mean, the point is that I know everybody has experiences like this, one way or the other. Something
Or, even a simpler thing that people have is like they know somebody's going to call, or they get a feeling someone's going to call right before they call, or,
yeah,
or you were thinking about somebody or talking about somebody, and then you get a text from them. You haven't heard from them in a year. And then, like I know
100%.
muggles probably have something like that
Oh,
happen.
muggles do all the time because that's what's that guy, the British guy, who was Terence McKenna's friend, who did the scientific studies of
Rupert Sheldrake?
Rupert Sheldrake, right? Who could like you can tell when people are looking at you. Like if you
Oh,
have your
right.
back turned and somebody's staring at you, it's a pretty amazing level of like it's like 2/3 of the time people can tell that somebody's staring at them and they'll turn around. He did a bunch of tests to verify that, and it seemed like he got some pretty significant results out of that.
I once did this like I was at this healing workshop where they were doing muscle testing with us to tell which kind of clair was your dominant clair. Like, because there's like
Mm-hmm.
5 different clairs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting to see because there was uh, probably 10 or 15 of us. Yeah, maybe more like 12 or 15. And most people their predominant one was feeling or whatever.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because that's your second chakra.
Yeah,
So
mine was audio. Like
I remember you telling me that.
yeah, mine was audio. And I do seem to get like that is I definitely can hear rocks and stuff like that. So like I that one made sense to me, like that wasn't
Sure.
weird, but very few people, like they think there was one or two of the 12 who their primary one was clairvoyance, like where they could actually see it.
Right. Well, part of what's happening is that there's not much permission to be clairvoyant in this world, in this society.
Yeah.
And it's easing up a little bit. I mean, it's probably a little bit more acceptable than it was even when I learned. So that was, 22, 23 years ago, uh, getting up on 20, almost 24 years ago, a long time ago. And yeah, so there isn't as much permission to be clairvoyant. Now we focused on clairvoyance because clairvoyance is safer. That's the idea. It's safer. The same reason that you
Well, but so basically everybody can, like a muscle or something, like you can work out each of these kinds of clairs, right? So even if your primary natural ability is not clairvoyance, you could train that muscle, right?
yeah. I mean, I think going in, the advantage I had was anybody who's like a visual artist, then you're using your eyes, and that keeps you kind of in the neighborhood of using your psychic eyes. So it's probably a little easier for people that are doing any kind of visual work to tap into that. But the truth is that at the same time I say that, there were people who were amazing clairvoyants who didn't have any kind of visual art leaning or work or anything like that. There were people from kind of every background. I mean, we started when you started talking, about like male guys who were psychic. I thought that the other guys who were psychic would be very effeminate or very new agey. I thought I'd be seeing guys like in wizard robes or shit like that, or people, or big crystals hanging around their
Right,
necks
like
and stuff.
Dungeons and Dragons dudes or something,
Anything. I just couldn't picture it, and
or like Dungeons and Dragons, but
I do too. I'm Gary Gygax, right? Yeah. I went into the classroom. I think there were like 6 guys, maybe 8 guys in this room, and they were like each one was like this different stereotype of a person or something. It was weird. It was like the funniest thing because I came in, I was like a minute late coming in. So they just sat down and started the class. But there was somebody from every background. It was just each person seemed like they had no social connection to the person that was sitting next to them.
Okay.
Right. And so I came in and sat down, and I could feel the floor, like I could feel this energy that was like a couple feet off the floor. Like I was being sucked down into the floor. It was so strange. It was like the gravity was thicker and heavier in the center of the room where people were sitting. And it was like very easy to sit down in a chair. Like I sat down and I was like, okay, this is definitely what I should be doing, is like sitting still in the chair. Like this is what felt comfortable. Because the energy was almost like, it was almost like there was energy saying like, sit down. Like when I came in, you know, it was like this gravity. And I found out that everybody was grounding, right? Everyone was using a grounding cord that they were connecting to the center of the planet. So everyone's grounding was working, and the energy of that, like I could feel it, you know, before I even knew what it was. So it was just very memorable. And then because it was this class that was called Male One, then there was like it was Christmas time or something. And then there was like a dinner that was like for the guys who were part of the Psychic Institute. And I just kept expecting everybody to be like a airy fairy wizardy type person, and like they weren't at all. Like it was basically just the same as like a cross section of people on the street, like randomly is what it was like. It was like there were middle-aged people, there were older people, you know, all different races, backgrounds of people. And there were just a lot of guys who just, you would never in a million years expect them to be into something like this, but they were good. They were good readers. I got really used to everybody basically being pretty good.
So did most people use this for our personal just development, or did they end up going on and using it to be a reader?
Good question. So yeah, most of the people I think ended up using it sort of as a therapeutic thing, because they would say that like 1 year of doing this in a group with people, like being at this school, would be like 10 years of therapy. Like people would joke about that, but it was definitely true. I mean, I didn't even really necessarily think anything was wrong with me when I went in there, but there were just so many things that I felt like I could learn how to get control of and sort of change or be more the way I wanted to in my life by using the stuff that they taught me there. And I think actually what seemed to happen with people in a way is that they got so into the self-care and the self-maintenance and the self-therapeutic part of it, because that's sort of foregrounded, because they're really trying to teach people how to be healthy in the use of their psychic abilities. So they're stressing that everybody is psychic, but that really the greater challenge is just to be able to take care of yourself on a psychic level rather than just display your ability. Yeah. You know, so rather than trying to prove that you're like psychic or the best psychic or whatever, it's more important to be self-aware of what's happening to you on a psychic level so that you can.
And like, I'll speak for as like a client of yours who's that stuff. I would say that like you've worked on the grounding cord thing with me, and then you've also worked on clearing your space of like any other influence and just really feeling into you as yourself, like, you know, like your own energy without any interference from anybody else. And I think that that's like hugely valuable for everybody to at least get into that space occasionally within themselves. So that's like a tool that I think, even if you don't want to use it for going further into more psychic stuff, that's just a tool that as a human you should do.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I totally. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, like I said, I think people just got so into that aspect of it that a lot of people, a lot of people had careers and day jobs that maybe meant that they weren't going to try to make this into a thing anyway. Okay. But it seemed like only about maybe 15%, 20% of the people at most really had an interest in making a career out of it. I mean, it's not an easy way to make a living. It probably took me about 5 years to get to the point where I was really making any money at all doing readings.
Because then you basically for a long time have been a word of mouther, right? Like
yeah, that's the way I wanted to do it. Yeah. I mean, it was what happened is I graduated from that program. I was teaching there. got a little burnout probably. I was doing it all the time. I was reading people like every day, all day, just doing it all the time. And so I spent, the better part of 5 to 10 years just occasionally doing it because I knew so many psychics. I get so used to being like going out to parties and stuff where 80% of the people, or 3/4 of the people there would be psychics, just got used to it.
Cool crowd.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. You could, when you're hanging out with that many people, they know a lot about you.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just read people. It was get really used to that. It was very strange.
Well, it makes for interesting conversations too, right? You can just cut the bullshit and go.
Oh yeah, there's very little bullshit because you couldn't really hide anything. You can go straight into what's happening. Yeah, totally. And anyway, I think I got to a point where finally my life experience took me further and further away from that, to where I wasn't really around very many psychics anymore. I was very close to a couple of people, and I was living in New York, and somehow somebody found, like it got out that I could do this. And then I just started doing it. Like I wasn't charging anything for it. I was just doing it. And then I started teaching, and, eventually I got to a point where I kind of had to charge something because it was taking up a lot of time. Yeah. So I kind of set it at a level where I wanted to make sure that I was doing something that was helping people, rather than like try to be casting myself in some light as like this glorious, person or something who had this ability, because I knew everybody has it. So I operated for a while as a teacher from a standpoint of, really believing in people's psychic ability. I think more than they did, and going like, come on, you can do it. And that got a little bit crazy because there were a lot of people who just couldn't see what I could see in them, couldn't see the ability that they very obviously had. So I kind of dialed back the teaching and focused more on reading. And so that's been pretty.
It's like I've always known, as on a personal level, that and some people don't like the word psychic, maybe intuitive. I've always known I'm intuitive. Like, and I've had some extreme cases throughout my life or whatever. I know I am. But it's like I have less than zero desire to read people. Like even like I've done a bunch of these like healing modality things, like energy healing and energy work, stuff like that. I have zero desire for that to do one-on-one sessions with people on stuff like that. Just, I don't know why. I'm just kind of like, that's just not my calling.
That's
but
cool.
I still think these exercises and these things are good to know for yourself even.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they are. Yeah. I mean, I've found that they are. I think that, that's interesting. I wonder if the way that people would do it when they were learning is there'd be like a line of people, like 3 or 4 people on, like 2, 3, 4 people on average, where there'd be one person who maybe had some more experience, who'd be the center, who'd be running the reading. And then there'd be people sitting on the side who'd chime in like with little like sections of it. Okay. Yeah. So I wonder if it'd be interesting to see if maybe you enjoy that. I don't know. I mean, you're a people person. You like.
No, I think it's like I get a lot of people's problems, like even from the Nikkianajones things, and they'll be like, oh, you really helped me out when you were talking about this thing or this thing. And like, I'll write them some stuff and I'll just be like, I feel like it's like energy vampiricism or something. I feel like I don't, it's just not what I want to focus on. It's just, I'm always just kind of like, I would love for them to learn how to heal themselves, but even if I did a little healing on them, I know that the same thing would come back at them if they don't know how to fix the root.
Absolutely. It's a good awareness what you're saying. There's lots of that stuff that can be vampiric, as you say. It can be big energy suck. All the psychic tools were very much geared towards heightening a person's awareness of boundaries and understanding when someone is sucking the energy out of you and having permission to not do that. Right. So when I give readings for people, I'm not trying to solve their problems. I'm actually not really trying to help them. I just like that I do help them. When I'm actually doing the reading, what I'm doing is I'm doing something for myself. I'm letting that person, it's like a spirit to spirit conversation is what happens. So it's the person sitting across from me, and it works remotely. Most of the readings I'm doing are remote. So that's kind of a wrinkle that people might find interesting.
Yeah.
Is that person's just sitting on the screen in front of me, but the intention that they want to get a reading is good enough to create that agreement.
How do you feel about that, by the way? Just real quick as a side note, like the online versus in person.
It seems to really not be much of any kind of difference. I think I'd rather read someone in person if I had the choice. For most people, right? There's some people where I'm glad that they're not in front,
right.
They're not in front of me. But as far as being able to see someone, the energy of it is slightly different, but I don't think it's any less accurate or helpful. It's just you can feel that there's a little bit of a remove, but the aura, the energy, and the pictures from the person are pretty clear. Yeah, because the spirit, it's a spirit to spirit thing, you know. It's that person as a spirit wants to communicate with you as a spirit. Right. So there's the spirit in the body, that dichotomy.
Yeah.
And most of the time we're foregrounding the body. Spirit is kind of taking a backseat to that most of the time. And in this kind of situation, we flip it around. Spirit's a little more important.
It's interesting though, because I feel like, you know, especially with the last 2 years, we're almost being primed to live in a digital world instead of having in-person stuff. And I like that you got to learn with a bunch of people in person like that. It's kind of a shame, but I bet you that doesn't go on like that right now. So yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's true. It's there's the advantages for that place, for the school, right? Which is not necessarily what we want to talk about the whole time, but the advantage for that place is that they can teach people all over the world where they couldn't before. The advantage for me is I can read people all over the world. So I've got clients building in Taiwan right now. So I'm reading a bunch of people in Taipei, because it's sort of one person will refer me to somebody else, or refer me to somebody else, or refer me to somebody else.
Right.
Everything's by referral. I don't really do. I'm starting. This is kind of the beginning of me thinking about a tiny bit of promotion. You know, I don't think I'd ever really want to do more than something like this. This is a lot.
He has a website now.
I do. Yes. Distancebetweenplanets.com. Distancebetweenplanets.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about timelines. Like, how fixed are things?
I don't know what that.
You know, what do you, like, I mean, like let's say you got a psychic reading and there was something you didn't like about it. How like, not that okay.
No, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's
you
cool.
know,
actually,
like, what do you do about it? Like,
okay, number one, what you're saying is really great, because some of the best readings, actually, people who hate them at the time. That's a reality. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a big part of being able to be a psychic. You're not going out of your way to offend somebody or be a jerk, but you may tell them something that they don't like hearing. And it may take like a month, you know, or half a year for it to really sink in what it was, that, you know, what the reality of what was said. So I'm always working on my communication to have it be as clear and as gentle as possible with people, but I don't pull any punches. Like I said, sometimes the readings are, the person's in much better shape than they think they are, you know, and I'm showing them all these validating things about them. Sometimes there's people who are, occasionally, you know, when someone's really in kind of a really stuck space, they'll try to kind of block me in the reading. Like they'll try to kind of guide, like control it, and control the outcome. Like they want to hear this brilliant person, and that they're like super spiritually evolved and everything. And it's like, well, those things might be true. Those two things might be true, but that's not what they're here for right now. Is like, you know, they have tons of problems in their relationship they don't want to look at. And I'm like, okay, this stuff, and the more they're avoiding it, the bigger it gets, like the more glaring it is, you know, like, or there's a family dynamic. They can't forgive somebody in their family, and and that the energy is like stuck there. Sometimes somebody can't forgive them. That's a little different. But when they're in control of it, they can make that choice of whether they want to release that energy and kind of move forward, or accept that their relationship is over, or save one that's fallen apart, right? That's there's all kinds of different things,
Right,
there's all kinds of different things. So occasionally, I mean, I could think of all kinds of other stuff too, in other spheres, professional spheres, a
Oh,
person's religious background, all kinds of things
yeah.
that you could see very clearly. And I can kind of feel sometimes as I say it. Sometimes I can't feel it. I'm just very neutral, and I don't notice that the person hates hearing it, and I'll say it, and then they find out that, it's true, but sometimes it's a good thing that they don't like hearing, or sometimes that they love the things they're hearing. I don't know. It's just, you have to be very neutral. You have
Right.
to kind of be able to tell people. Sorry if I'm steering this,
No,
you
you're
know.
fine.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and as far as timelines, like some readings will focus on the past, some will focus on the future. Some will focus on the very immediate present. There's a combination usually that's in there. Um, it's very weird sometimes when I'll see things where there's just an enormous amount of certainty. I'll feel this total certainty that I'm telling them something that they need to hear right now, and that it's going to be. Sometimes it's like one woman, I told her something was going to happen in 4 years, and that's starting to really. I don't got too much further out than that in terms of a prediction, but there was some, occasionally there's some things that just come in with this total. The picture comes in with this total certainty,
So
and that's.
you have guides that help you.
No, not in the readings.
Okay.
In
In the
theory, not in the
healing.
yeah, in the healings, yes. Now in the readings, no, but also there's guides that get involved in readings one way or the other. There's guides that try to steer you away from them, and guides that try to help you too. In theory, you're supposed to be using your own energy, and I would say that more than 90% of the time that's what's happening. um there's definitely a difference between all this stuff is about getting you into your body.
Yeah.
Okay. All the tools and the meditation tools that I learned, and the meditation, it's kind of a weird thing. The meditation tools are, they seem to be pretty much entirely self-therapeutic, but they're exactly the same thing that I use to prepare for a reading. So if I do that for an hour before a reading, then I'm pretty much set. If I neglect to do that, it's very dicey. So I got to discipline myself. I make sure that anytime I'm scheduled a reading, then I really schedule it. It's an hour ahead of when I meet the person is when it starts for me. So I'm meditating for an hour before I meet that person. And if I'm not really completely grounded, some days the energy is thicker than other days, So if there's times where it's just harder to ground and harder for me to be in my body, so there may be a being around there that's kind of making it trippy, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay, okay, I'm just gonna tell a story real quick.
Sure.
Like it's okay, so um, I don't know when we started working on the psychic stuff, but it was before New Year's because we had done something. We had worked really hard on grounding for a couple of days in a row or something, and um, on New Year's I got I was flying, and on New Year's Eve we had some weird delay, and there was like some crap going on where I was supposed to land in Salt Lake City, and there was weather, and we made the flight like made an attempt, and then they diverted right at the last minute because there was wind shears, which is like stupid. You should just divert and go to another city. Like wind shears like are one of the biggest things that have plane crashes. So anyway, on our they made two attempts, and we could feel like something was going on, and I started to know, like, I think the air, everybody kind of knew something was wrong. And on the third attempt, a wind shear took us, and like we bounced off the ground, like, and then it was like you could hear a pin drop, like everybody, I thought people would be like, ah, no, people were like it was a completely full plane. Everybody was scared shitless. I was scared. I
Were
was
you
like, wow, this is not how I want to die.
were you
um
could
and then
were you trying to was it trying to land?
Oh yeah, I was trying to land, and we like
Okay.
literally bounced like a toy off of the ground. Like we were
Whoa.
coming into land, and then the wind like took us down and went boom, and then they pulled right back up as it was doing the thing, and so the tires hit the ground, but we bounced off, and you could feel like the jerk, and so they aborted the landing. Then the idiots, which I totally was not okay with them, and like was really mad at them and the entire van ride, the pilots. But anyway, so and we talked about that later. But anyway, so they went for a fourth attempt, which I think they should have just gone to divert to another city at that point. But whatever. So on the fourth attempt, I just like I didn't like being in the like super fear thing, and like this whole like you could just feel everybody's tension or whatever. So like I couldn't think of anything else to do except for I grounded, like you said. So like I did like this visual exercise. I created a grounding cord to the center of the earth, and then I just like I like calmed myself way down, and I like let go of everything and let go of any tensions, and then I like visually landed the plane safely. Now, I'm not saying I had anything to do with it landing safely. I'm just saying that for at least that moment of absolute panic and sheer terror, like I was able to find calm in the storm.
Right.
And so like that was like a practical way that I used an exercise from psychic training stuff that if nothing else helped me feel better.
Right. 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 And we could say that I remember this story. I
Yeah.
remember you talking about that and the grounding.
And I was like,
And
Happy New Year.
yeah, yeah. So what I would say is that we don't have to prove that you helped the plane land, but we can entertain the possibility that you did help the plane land, right? I mean, it's we're not going to prove one way or the other, but it probably didn't hurt.
I don't think it would have hurt. And if
Yeah,
nothing else, I
yeah,
definitely like I got my own heart center from being like ah to just calm, just like it's que sera sera. Like let's just chill. Like it's yeah. If this
yeah.
is how I die, I've lived a cool life. Whatever. Like I
Right,
don't know.
right, right. You were calm.
I calmed
You
it.
you
Yeah.
released all the fear out of your body down the grounding cord, which is awesome. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
probably grounded. You probably did release. I mean, you probably grounded the plane in that way. I mean, I would say that's my
Well,
inclination.
I mean,
That's
if I
my
did or
inclination.
didn't, it
Yeah,
made me feel like I did. So that was good.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it gets into that's you're making me think of something that I'll mention right away, which is that when I'm reading people, I'm saying a bunch of things that I can't prove one way or the other. There's a lot of and you have to kind of learn to be okay with that if you're going to do that. Anybody who's giving readings, I would say that that's a really big part of doing it. Like I could read you, right? If I was reading you theoretically, and you hadn't told me that story, but I'm seeing, that you're helping the plane land,
Hmm.
right? And I told somebody that, and they would be like, bullshit. Well, I can't argue with them. I have to be like, this is what I'm seeing, and that's it. I can't take it back because I can't say that I didn't see it. But if I not convincing you, it's okay,
Well,
and if you never believe it, it's okay.
and there's also
Yeah.
that whole like if you know of things that might could come, like your dream story,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like a gift in which if you can choose to go down that path, or if you see something like that's coming, you can choose to do things that could change that outcome.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there was well, I don't what I'll say is that it's some of the really biggest ones I've seen with people. um I'm not particularly my track record in relationships is pretty average in terms of my ability to handle them, but I'm really good at being able to read real relationships with people and things that are happening in relationships with people.
Mm.
So I'm just prefacing. So I could see, like I said, my mom's telling me about her divorce when I'm 13, right? So I'm handling.
Right.
It says something about a lot of the themes of stuff that I've read with people. Yeah, and I was going through a breakup in 2011 with someone I'd been with for a while, and I felt pretty guilty because I was moving, and I felt like I'm kind of abandoning this person in a way. I felt a lot of guilt, whether that was accurate or not. Subjectively, that's how it felt for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a dream where I was in a yoga class and I'm sitting on the floor, and my ex-girlfriend is sitting over like the other side of the room, and she's like crying, and then like these people are there, these women are running the class, they're like helping her, they're like touching her shoulders and stuff, and she's like, whoa. And I was looking over at her, I'm like, God, I really kind of feel like shit, because she's probably crying because I'm moving, you know, and stuff. And I'm like, and then it was very strange. I turned and I saw this girl standing. She's like probably about 9 years old. And then I saw a boy, and let me see the age difference. Yeah, there was about a 2-year, 3-year age difference between the people. There was a girl, she was standing, and then there was a little boy. And the girl was like kind of looking off to the side. She didn't really want to look at me. As soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, that's my girlfriend's daughter. But she hadn't been born yet.
Okay.
Okay,
So it's almost like you knew you had to get out of the way because those weren't your kids.
Yeah, in a way, it's sort of like God or the universe or whoever was telling me kind of what you said, and maybe not necessarily that I had to get out of the way, but it was okay that we were apart because she was going in a different direction. Okay. You know, what you said could totally be true also. I mean, I was
well, did she have 2 kids?
Yeah. That's what I guess. Yeah, I don't need to go into detail about.
Oh, sorry, I ruined the punchline.
No. It's okay. It's okay actually, because the other stuff was really very personal. They kind of dealt more with my feelings, and one of the children was communicating with me telepathically, you know, about me and stuff, and telling me things that were very nice, encouraging things about me, right? So the little boy and the girl, and I was like, oh, this is her son and this is her daughter, right? So the daughter's the older one, and then the little boy is sort of like a little bit more, you know, like he's got that spiritual healer kind. He had a little bit more of that kind of vibe.
Oh, okay.
And the girl was a little bit more closed to me, at least. And so I told her about it. At some point, you know, and she thought, well, her response is like, I'm way too old to have kids. I'm never going to have kids. And she did have those kids. She had those kids. She had the girl and the boy, and that's the same age. They came, yeah. And she had the girl, and I said, well, you know, you're going to have the boy. And she said, no way. I'm way too old. And I said, you know, you're going to have the boy. And then I, you know, and we're friends. We keep in touch. And she's, you know, she got a hold of me, and she said, I'm pregnant. I said, no, that's the boy. The boy's coming. And their personalities are the same way they were in the dream too, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I've seen some other ones too, you know, some of them, some make you happy, some make you sad, you know, whatever, just like music.
I guess give us some advice or some tools for a person who thinks like, what can you do with a psychic reading or and like what, you know, if somebody thinks this is all hogwash, what do you say to them?
If they think it's bullshit, I don't try to convince them that it's not bullshit.
Just okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, actually, that's how I'm becoming in life in general. I'm like, well, there's plenty of other things for you.
I pretty much totally embrace that it's bullshit if somebody thinks that it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I won't fight it at all. Like, I mean, there was one kid who was, you know, or guy or whatever, who was very skeptical. And I said, actually, what we do is we just lie, you know. And and he was like, that's terrible. How can you get away with that? And I said, I don't know. We just lie. And it's just a weird thing that the lies come true sometimes. The lies happen to be right, you know, and it's just, it's kind of like that. You meditate. The main thing is you gotta really be in your body. Gotta be, as a spirit, you gotta be anchored in, grounded into your body.
Yeah, which is kind of counterintuitive because you kind of think that it's like an etheric like thing that's like above, like different, you know.
Well, you real quickly, you can read like that, but that's when people use guides, spirit guides.
Okay.
because that person will kind of partly get out of their body and the spirit guide will come in. And because that being doesn't have a body, they can hop around, pick up
Okay.
information, right? Tell you things. But that's it's a much more chaotic and karmic,
Unreliable.
unreliable and karmic way to read. It's just not something we were really encouraged to stay as far away from that way of reading as possible. And I feel like that was good advice.
Yeah, it's like the whole channeling thing. I uh because I've been told many times that I could probably channel, but I'm kind of like, bitch, no, I am in this body and I want to be in this body, and I'm not going to allow something else to come in and use this body. I don't care if I had the ability to or not. It's like, I don't like I this is my turn. Like I'm only on dancing on this earth for a short time. Cat Stevens. But I mean, I'm gonna use every minute of it to be embodied in my body, and I don't want to just like let something else use it. I don't know. Maybe
Totally.
that's selfish, but that's kind of how I feel.
Well, what's wrong with being selfish about yourself?
Well, that's true.
You're
Yeah.
not taking from anybody else.
And I don't know what these things are or aren't, and
Yeah.
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 So
But go
anyway,
ahead.
that just makes it to where like I mean, good on people who can channel and are into that and all that some stuff. And like I've listened to some YouTube channelers and things like that. That's it's one thing to partake of that. But as a person myself, I'm not allowing. It sounds like it's like a glorified word for possession in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's really common. Like, I mean, it happens all the time. Like everybody's channeled something at some point in their life. Okay. Like if you're in a family arguments where things get really heated and people get sort of stupid, like they start to kind of not really even say the things that they
Yeah.
mean to be saying. Very often there's a spirit guide that's in the family that could be channeling through different people that keeps the conflict going because it
Yeah.
bonds them. A lot of the beings that kind of mess with you and get involved in stuff, the sort of lower vibration beings, they're sort of like the bums that hang out. They're people that are kind of like they're leeching, they're hanging out, and that kind of stuff happens pretty often. Lots of
Yeah.
creative people can be channeling like a little bit higher vibration stuff where there's beings that have a lot of creative energy of some kind, like
Yeah.
people who perform on stage who get really wild and stuff on stage, like you know
Yeah, like Bashar or like Abraham Hicks or something like
well,
that.
those people who are doing it on purpose. But i'm
Right.
talking about i'm talking about people who were just performers, like
Oh, okay.
yeah, actors,
Like
people who,
Beyonce or something. Yeah, like you're like
sure, oh yeah,
yeah.
like all those, some of the wilder ones, and they're that's it's called trance mediumship, like trance mediumship. So it like, it's that person's ability to kind of lock onto a vibration and maybe control a room on a sort of vibrational level, and they'll probably bring a being sort of partly into their body, maybe not all the way in, but that being will sort of be somewhat anchored in, that has the ability to kind of ground that space and can fix it at a certain vibration. That's why a lot of artists are very tortured, is because they're
Yeah.
they're they're sort of halfway into, it's a sort of a shamanic thing. You're halfway into the spirit realm. You're kind of
Well, you
mediating
said I'm
between.
a big trans medium.
Yes, you are a pretty big trance medium.
Yeah. Yay.
I'm
You're
describing
talking shit about him, and it's like, that's what you are. I'm like, yeah, okay.
No. Well, I had a reputation for being one for sure, man. When I was teaching, there were a lot of people that thought I was too crazy to be teaching.
Yeah, I
Really,
mean,
because
I
of
just like I had this dream at one point, which was like kind of like a learning dream for me where I was in this like almost like college dorm room, and I started noticing I was teaching for some reason, and I started noticing some of the audience members were like shadow people or shadow beings or demon kind of sort of things. And I was just like, and then I think they sort of knew, like realized that I was onto them and that I could see them. And as soon as I saw them, they like tried to like sneak out the doors, and I was like, boom, and I shut all the doors and I locked them in. And then I just became, I always, sometimes that happens in dreams where you just become like a giant or bigger. And I was just like, this is not how you do it. If you want to be in a body, you have to go through the, like, this is not how you do it.
That's
And
pretty awesome.
yeah, and I was just kind
Yeah.
of going like, schooling them on their level of karma in the spiritual world that they have to do in order to get incarnated in a body, and that they are messing up everybody else's experience by not doing their work on their side in order to like come into a vehicle in the right channels and in the right way, because I felt like they're trying to cheat the code to come experience physicality, but there's like a there's things they have to do over there in order to get to do this. So it's kind of like a, yeah, they're cheaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's you summed up a lot of stuff that I mean, personally, that I had very little awareness of when I learned this formally, when I was taught. So you're yeah, you got it. I mean, you got some pretty impressive,
Well, I mean, I waking Nikki doesn't know this, but you know, like I think I probably tapped into my sleeping, um, like my best power that I mean, okay, hearing rocks is a lame superpower, but my best
pretty
like
cool.
I mean, I like it. It's fun because you know
Hearing
whatever.
rocks. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
You know, but is my dreaming abilities. Like I'm a pretty lucid dreamer, and I'm pretty like I get full memory back a lot when I'm in dream. Like I'm a very powerful dreamer in terms of I can do things in dreams that I can't do in real life. So that's great. So I don't even know if that's a psychic power or what that is. That's fun because the thing.
Sure.
But you know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had that kind of understanding of what these spiritual being or these darker energy, lower vibration. And you know what? I wasn't even like I don't even fault them or like you know whatever. It's just it's we do that in human life. We always try to do cheat codes. We always try to bypass things. You know, spiritual
Totally.
bypassing. You know, we're always trying to like figure out the
Yeah,
best way
they
to get.
can't be blamed for trying to do it, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, it there's so many different things that makes me think about, you
And
know.
you know,
Yeah.
we get through this like amnesia zap or something to where we just are like we don't really know, half of us as humans don't really know what the hell we're doing here or what's going on. And so, you know, I could easily see how, especially if you were living in a society that doesn't even, half of us don't even believe we have a soul. And so like
Hmm.
in a way, like a lot of people move aside and let somebody else take the reins.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. Like in what we'd call an atheistic society,
Mm.
okay, not believing in spirit, just in general. Like in terms of psych, like the word psychic, it does have a certain amount of baggage. I think that normally or typically or often it gets interpreted as a person that says their psychic is claiming that they have abilities other people don't have and that they're going to be able to know everything about somebody or read their mind, right? Like mind reading is
Right.
totally uninteresting and unimportant. Like I have no interest in mind reading, like reading somebody's thoughts. um okay, I don't want to die, I don't want to get lost. um but psychic, the word, I just interpret it as being anything related to your awareness as a spirit, being aware in some way that's not dependent directly on the physical senses, right? It's
Yeah.
like any level of awareness. So like the stuff that's happening in your dreams, where you're having these insights and you're seeing this stuff and you're understanding these layers, or you know, all kinds of different intuitive experiences that people have. You know, I mean, most relationships, I mean, like intimate relationships, you know, there's some kind of psychic thing that happens between the two people,
Yeah.
right? That
It's a soul entanglement.
exactly. You know, I mean, we say that and we know that it's true, but then there actually are moments that the people have, where they are in each other's presence and they kind of know something's happening. They can feel that there's a bond forming, or you get a sort of sense of what this person's going to be in your life, or, whether or not it changes or what other layers there are to it. That's a way that psychic awareness comes through in people's lives. I mean, people that are great seducers, right? They've got psychic abilities for sure, because they're reading the pictures of what the other person wants, so that they can project something that's closer to what that person wants.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
And that's all unspoken. Most of that stuff is unspoken, right? I mean, most of that level of appeal is an unspoken thing between people.
Yeah, and I imagine sometimes it's even unconscious,
Right. Yeah. Certainly there's different levels of how aware a person is of what they're doing.
Yeah. I kind of feel like embracing the fact that you have intuitive abilities is like it's being more conscious in general. It's not living an unconscious life.
So, yeah, absolutely. You have to, I mean, a big part of doing it is you have to be aware of how much you're the driver of things happening in your life. I wouldn't take it to the point that some people do, where they think that everything you're doing is an intentional thing, and that you've got control over like every part of your experience through your thoughts.
Well,
and
yeah,
stuff
I mean, you still have to contend with other people, so
yeah, there's limits, but the amount of control you do have is usually a lot greater than what people will usually acknowledge. Like we've been going through, without getting bogged in the details, we've gone through 2 or 3 years at this point of, I'm not saying only these past 2-3 years, but especially the past couple of years of
bullshit,
of a lot of stuff you're hearing a lot of stuff that doesn't feel right. You're hearing a lot of information. There's a lot of it, like a lot of stuff in the media. There's a lot of stuff, being projected outward, that we're being told about the world and how things are how things are working on a material level.
Yeah, and it's ongoing.
That right, and then there's things that feel that there's something that feels false about a lot of stuff, and you can and that I think that there's an intuitive level of people knowing that a lot of what they're getting is not quite right. Okay, without I'm not trying to get into the specifics.
I was gonna say, it's like, again, some people I don't know if their intuition's tapped on.
Let me I'm gonna try to
be diplomatic. Okay, try to be diplomatic.
And I don't want to get us stuck here forever, so I'm trying to find a right way to kind of like get to the point, which is, yes. Now, what I've found is that there hasn't really been one particular group of people with all the answers to everything that's happening. There's been little pieces of each thing that seem to be true, regarding COVID, vaccines, political things, war, all kinds of stuff.
Everything.
Okay.
Right.
So there's all these different layers. But what I'm talking about is just the intuitive level of vibrationally, when things seem like they're not quite true, what people are saying. There's a feeling that's there. And you can't always 100% always, you cannot always necessarily tell the difference between a truth or a lie, but there is a difference in vibration between truth and lies, just generally speaking, right? And so very often there's kind of a willful naivete on the part of a person. There's a part of a person who maybe want to play the victim and not admit that they can kind of feel things are off in what they're hearing or seeing, or want to look below the surface to kind of see what's really happening, whether it's stuff in your personal life or things globally. Yeah.
Okay, so that's like discernment. It's like basically like training your psychic muscle will help you with your discernment.
Yeah. Everything is like I said, what we were taught, the training that I got. And I'm not saying it's the answer to absolutely everything. It was just very good for being able to do readings. was to focus the energy here, right here in the center of my head, center of your head, in your sixth chakra, which is
is not in the front of your lobe, but like if you put your finger on your ears.
Got it. Back here in the middle. So when
Yeah.
you see the pictures of somebody with the third eye, that may be illustrating something. It could be talking about different levels of awareness, because like the yogis can move their the legendary yogis of history, could move their awareness to all kinds of different areas and focus it. But that eye might be emblematic of something that's happening a little further back in here. And you have to be able to see things up here in the reasoning part of your brain, the analytic part of your brain. You're not always going to get the answers. In fact, it's going to be very hard for you to
get clarity.
I think it's going to be the way I'd put it for myself is it's very hard to reach a conclusion that you can't absolutely prove if your awareness is stuck up in the problem solving part of your brain. So if you can shift it back to the actual center of your head, then you've got something. And then you've got, your crown chakra, if you can be in touch with that, and your throat chakra to be able to speak what their truth is that you're seeing. And that's really important, because there's times where I'll see things, a whole big cluster of stuff will come in certain moments in readings. And if I don't feel like I have permission to say everything, I might get a little ways into it, and then the reading ends, and I'm going, damn, it's almost like having a cartoon, like a bubble, like a speech bubble, from a cartoon, like a comic strip. It's like almost like I've got something like that, like stuck in my throat, and I need to like pull it out and like put it up there. Like, damn, I didn't get it. I got most of the.
Is there stuff that you don't say to people because you're like, ooh, I don't know.
Very rare, very, very, very rare. I'll usually try to find a way to frame things that's validating for a person, even if it's bad news. I mean, I'll be unstinting about the bad news if the person's throwing up a big screen, like they really don't want to hear it. I'll sort of make sure that they hear it, because that means that they kind of need to hear it. If they're really resisting it, if they're being very willful about it, then I will make sure that they hear the thing that they're trying not to hear, because that's probably what they came to me for, is to hear something that they're not going to hear from anybody else. Yeah. But it's very seldom that I will tell somebody something that's just totally horrible and there's no recourse, because it's really mostly what's happening is people want to get clarity about things that they can do stuff about, or things that they have ability, and if they ask, if someone who's dying will ask you a question like, am I dying? And if they know that they're dying, I can say, yeah, you're dying, and you've got a year or something like that. But that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, there's just so much more to life than that kind of shit, Yeah. It's not really all just these dire things. It's all kinds of, there's readings that are very light, I mean, I remember reading someone maybe a couple months ago, and the woman was wanting to decide. I could see these pictures at the beginning of the reading, and I didn't understand what they were, right? So I could see that there was a road that she was on that was like this really dry, kind of unpleasant, barren road. And then off to the side of it was this little road that went off, and it was like a beautiful yard with like these really, really well-maintained trees and hedges and some, like, it just looked like a very well-maintained piece of property. Okay. And it's like, for some reason, I told her, I said, for some reason, you don't want to go over there, but I really think you'd be having a lot more fun over there than you are on this long ass road that's going off into the distance. And I can see that this other road you're on, it's like, there's a shit ton of ambition. There's all this ambition there. But the ambition is, I'm not sure if all that is going to make you happy. I think there's something more happy over here. Okay. Over in this other way. Sometimes you can't see my hands, but I was pointing one way and pointing the other way. Right. So, yeah. So, what she said is, oh, well, I'm running a landscaping business, with my partner, meaning her life partner. Okay. And she was like wanting to do something. I can't remember what she wanted to do, but it was just so obvious the direction she was going in was like going to be so much work. And she already had so much of a good life of what she wanted, you know. And then the way her relationship began. See, I'll see matching pictures. So I had a relationship once that began in a similar way, where somebody approached me in a way that completely shocked me. It was a woman that I really liked a lot, and I thought it was extremely attractive, and we dated a little bit, and we'd been together just a little bit, but never in a serious thing. And she moved away, and she said when she moved away, she said, you know, if you want to come stay with me, like if you want to come live, she's like, if you want to come live with me, you can always come live with me. And I was like, huh? What? And years later, we tried that, and there were a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm not with her, but there was a very meaningful experience for me. So I could see that energy. It's hard to explain. I could see that energy suddenly. Like you can see things that match with things, that people will show you things about yourself that you don't expect, that you never saw coming, you know, and they're just like a little, what we call like hellos. I used to hate some of this language. I used to think it was so corny, but I can't, some of the things I can't think of another better way to put it. It's like there were these little hellos, you know. And so this woman, I could see that she was in a relationship that started like that, where there was someone that she liked, but she never really thought that there would be a relationship, and that the person sort of approached her out of nowhere, you know, with this invitation to be in this relationship. And then she turned out that she was really happy in a relationship with this woman that she had her landscaping business with, right? So it was like kind of a little hello for me to kind of take me back to that, and I could kind of see what was really nice about that moment in my life, you know, and sort of appreciate it. And then I could at the same time see, you know, that this person had a lot of really good things going on in her life, and she needed to appreciate them and kind of step out of trying to go off on her own. And, you know, there's different people are in different situations, so that the right recipe for her wouldn't be necessarily somebody else. What they need to do is go off on that road.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, it's like you said, like there's two different paths. Like if you want the barren road, you can do what you're doing, or you can go. Yeah. I mean, it's there's choices. You don't have to do what you get shown.
There's choices. That's true.
Now, as a person who's clairvoyant and tapped into it, do you think that has, like, does that ever hurt you, or only has helped you?
Good question. I think that the tools are made in a way to always bend things back in the direction of taking care of yourself, healing yourself, right? It's sort of like, you know, sleep and water, sunlight, things like that are good for you, right?
Yeah.
You can theoretically overdo those things, right? There's people who occasionally have died from like trying to chug water, right? Or
That's true.
You get fried out in the sun if you get sunburn or whatever. Yeah. And there's people who, you know, there's the rare person that gets too much sleep to where it's bad for them, where they're
is that a thing? I guess.
I'm not for you. I'm sure that is hard to believe right now. Anyone who's a flight attendant, I don't think is. Or sorry, should I say that or not say it?
No, yeah, you could say
that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who has a demanding job, sleep is like a very precious commodity, right? Yeah. But I mean, so in theory, you could argue that these things are not good for you, but they usually are, right? So it's you can. I don't remember. I'm not sure where I was going with that.
Anyway, well, I'm just saying, like, has it ever been like you, like, let's say you see the wonderful senorita that you're like, oh, whoa, that's shocking, and she's like, yeah, come live with me. You're like, okay, but like you could sort of see that, hey, this isn't going to work long term, but it'll be fun for a minute. Like, is that kind of like knowing
that happens?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, that happens. Sure.
Is there anything that you wanted to say that you didn't say? Like, is there something that people, like, something valuable for people to take away about all this?
Yeah, I mean, well, I just wanted to. I would mention that. Like I said, there's not that much permission to be clairvoyant. So yeah, like clairvoyant and psychic, these are words that have a lot of baggage, because it's like clairvoyant, there's a kind of an all-knowing thing that gets put on people when they say this, and that's really not the point of it. It's really more like, when I read, it's really more like there's a movie, there's a series of scenes, and they're going
Right.
somewhere. Sometimes they're all kind of holding together as one thing. Sometimes they've got little fragments that go off in different places, but they're not everything that's happening. They're just the ability to kind of
Some highlights.
see some pieces of stuff. And usually um, the way that the energy is set, the intention is to have it be useful to that person in present time, so that they can do something with that information when they come out of the reading. So that's like an agreement between me and the person that I read, and God and the universe. Basically, it's like, whatever a person's belief in is regarding the supreme being, or really in anything, it's sort of non-specific. Just the idea is that there's two people that are spirits in bodies, and then there's like the whole universe, which is bigger than the both of us, but we're got a kind of arrangement that there's like a three-way thing that's going on, where the universe is making it okay for us to have a exchange that's not a karmic thing. I'm not trying to change that person, they're not trying to change me. We've just got a free flow of information between us, where that person's showing me pictures about themselves. They're, as a spirit, the idea is that they're very intentionally showing me these things. They're deliberately showing
Right.
me these things.
They're giving you permission to foresee.
Yeah, and that's just by their desire to have that reading, right? So they're putting those things out there when they're in front of me, either on the screen, or sometimes just on the phone, or in front of me physically, or whatever. And that stuff comes through, and then I talk about the stuff that I'm seeing. And so that's the arrangement, is that it's something they can use. That's the point.
Okay.
And it's visual. It's coming from here primarily, and that's through the meditation, which is focusing, taking the energy away from the lower chakras, right? First, second, third chakras, what we call the body chakras. During the day, there's a lot of permission to be psychic in your lower chakras, and they get kind of overworked. And the problem with them is that they function really by taking the energy into your body, because they're so physical. They're so that the energy of those lower chakras is so much concerned with material reality. So there's that one down at the base of your spine that's really preoccupied with survival. There's the one that's more emotional, that's in your pelvic region,
Yeah.
second one. And then there's the third one in your stomach, which deals more with mainly things like responsibility, competition, performance, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those three really get overworked. So there's lots and lots of permission to be psychic in terms of feeling, like you said, because that's mainly the third, a little bit the second and the third, and every once in a while a touch bit in the fourth, right? But the first has its own level of awareness too, right? So that the media is an example of, they manipulate people by getting them into their first chakra, which is why
that's why it's fear porn,
and
yeah, and it hasn't just been fear porn with COVID. I mean, I remember even as a kid, I'm like, okay, so this is the channel that just shows us about current murders and bad things that are happening everywhere. That's very weird. Like, no news is good news.
Right. If it bleeds, it leads, right? That's the idea. Yeah. So they want to keep people in fear for some reason. People are way down in the first chakra. They're pretty easy to manipulate. So whatever commercials come on while somebody's in a state of fear, their ability to, their discernment
comfort that, and
there's a lot
themselves from that, or
I mean, people are getting rich, right? There's some people that got fabulously rich in the last couple of years. There's people that are salivating over the money they could make from a war, right? So they want to get people.
I mean, like, think about all the mask makers and the hand sanitizer. I mean, I have I like, my siblings have like this kind of key, like this thing that's on their keychain that opens doors for you, so you don't have to touch the door. Like, just stupid little.
Oh, Right,
Yeah,
because
just
there's germs on the door,
because
right?
there's germs on the door. So it's like a little hook device that it has a little punch thing on it, and it has a little hook so you can, so if you're going into, if it, whatever, you use the thing to open the door handle, you don't use your hands.
I got so lucky as a kid, man, that I got dropped off at daycare or had to be in dirty playgrounds and stuff, because that builds
Immunity.
your
Yeah.
immune system gets a good blast from
Yeah,
that.
well, I mean, I remember my sister-in-law gave me one, and I was like, yeah, I don't want that. And she was just like, oh, it's a corona. And I'm like, dude, like, I no, I like, I'm not going to weaken my immune system by
Yeah,
touching stuff, like,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of well, I mean, now the statistics, the lockdowns have
Oh, I
that
mean,
they've
like,
been more harm than good.
there are some people that fly that have literally gone insane. Like, there was a guy that came on the other day who um completely, like, like, completely hand sand Lysol the entire area, put a bag in the front, and then put another one next to him, and had a manila envelope there, and was wearing a literal hazmat suit, like an actual full-blown hazmat suit with the thing on, like a helmet on, like, everything. And I'm like, okay. And he only bought one seat, and the seats next to him and on the other one were taken, and it was a full flight. And he started crying, like, this is a grown-ass man. He started shaking and crying and was saying, I can't get coronavirus, I can't get coronavirus. That's, I have permission. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Did you buy another seat? What's your deal? He, like, showed me his manila envelope. It was his boarding pass. There was nothing else in there. It was just his boarding pass. Like, I think he thought if he stuck stuff there enough, and I don't know what he was thinking, but he almost didn't fly. I was like, well, your options are, you can not fly. You don't have to
Yeah,
fly on here. Or,
yeah,
like, in fact, if you're this scared, I would recommend you don't fly. Like,
yeah,
you know, drive if you have to. I don't know, whatever you gotta do. Or you have to have other people who paid for tickets sit next to you, buddy. Sorry, those. Well, they told me up front there is no buddy up front. Like, you're messing with me. I didn't tell you anything. What are you talking about? And
good. So you have to,
it's just, but the
yeah,
thing is like, and I felt for him. I could feel, because it wasn't like he's doing this to be a jerk. It's like, this man has now at this point been driven crazy. This person was an actual crazy person, and I felt
yeah.
sorry for him, because I'm not trying to mess with him. He's psychologically not there.
Got to get grounded.
He needs some grounding. He
He
needs to
needs
take
some.
some psychic
He
classes.
needs some grounding. He needs some grounding. He's probably not very much in his body at that point.
Nope.
Yeah. Um,
Sorry for that tangent, but
no, that's a great story. I mean, yeah, that's a really great story. I mean, what I was thinking about while you were talking was that, you know, in your job, you've got to use your crown chakra a lot here, because you have to reach that point where you don't necessarily have what a whole lot of people would think is written authority, because they're seeing you primarily as being part of the service industry, right? That's in your title, your flight attendant. But there's a lot of time where you have to you have to organize what's
yeah,
happening
and
inside
note
the
to
plane.
people, like, don't mess with us too much, because we do have the power to kick you off the flight.
Oh yeah, yeah,
We have used it. I have
yeah,
used it.
yeah. Anybody who's in that position, usually I make a point of being as respectful as possible towards the, because it's just, you're setting the energy. You're in control of what's happening
I mean, like, I
ultimately.
don't, I don't, I don't give anybody. I mean, the only reason I kicked this one lady off, and this was right before COVID, so the COVID wasn't a thing. She spit in my face, like, she
That's pretty
spit, like,
intense.
on my face, and
Yeah,
I was like, oh, you're not flying.
yeah.
Okay, on this plane, not
Well,
with
good for
me.
you.
But that's an extreme example. Like, you have to have something like that happen before I would actually use that power. Like, I don't care, but I'm just saying, like,
But I applaud you for doing that, because that's a
yeah,
pretty severe boundary violation. I mean, there's times where people, just on a psychic level, when somebody violates your boundaries tremendously, there's a point at which, if you have the ability to boot that person out of wherever you are, just get them as far away from you as possible.
Probably a good idea.
That it's a good thing you're doing for yourself, and it might be a good thing you're doing for them, because if they do that once, then they're prone to do it some other time. And it's nice that they have the memory of, oh, that got me kicked off.
Yeah, I won't be going anywhere today, and I won't be ever going on this airline again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, there's that, and there's the energy of for you, right? There's the energy of, you don't want to carry it around in your aura that you just took it like and accepted it, right? Like, yeah. You don't want the debasement of that act, that it didn't go unanswered, not in terms of revenge, but that there was something, there was a fitting consequence. There was retribution, that there was something had to be brought to justice, and that you're doing that. It's a better picture to have in your aura, right? Like, because you get those pictures, everybody's carrying these pictures around in their aura, and people can see them. People can read people's pictures, but we're largely not conscious of it, including myself. I'm not overwhelmed by people's auras,
Yeah, so you turn it off sometimes, and then you consciously decide when you want to turn it on, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's times where I'm aware of things psychically, for sure, but it's a minority of the time. It's usually things that are very pertinent to me, especially, is where I have my awareness. When I'm walking down the street and stuff, I'm not like overwhelmed by other people. That I'm not that type of person. There are psychics who are like that. I think I might have been more like that when I was younger, and maybe a bit more like that before I had this stuff, but I was never super duper like that. So but I learned to turn it down and control it more when I got the tools. I wasn't overwhelmed, by stuff. But the one thing I get a little overwhelmed by, that I'm aware, I'm a little bit more dialed into, like, global stuff.
Yeah. Now let's talk about people real quick, about your global stuff. Like, you have an Instagram channel that you're very active on, and you do astrology with some psychic stuff in it. And basically about global stuff that's going on, which is so
right now that's all I'm doing. I've got my big dream of a YouTube channel, which I guess I can do now finally.
Do it.
But so there's distance between planets where all the E's are threes. So if you could take the E's and turn them into threes, that's my Instagram channel, which is primarily astrology.
I'll put it up here.
Yeah, so there's things that come in on a purely intuitive level related to global stuff, that I seem to be a little bit more tapped into than most other psychics that I know. But it doesn't necessarily, I mean, people just have different directions that they lean in. I'm a little more tapped into certain things that it seems like than some other people, but I can't be certain of that. I'm not saying that I'm better at it than anyone. It's just that,
or you definitely have a draw to it.
Yeah, there's a kind of a weird thing. And then so that drew me to, in astrology, studying the motion of the very distant outer planets. So the further out you go, the slower they move, the longer they take occupying like 1 degree of the zodiac. They'll kind of hang out in one place for a long time. They'll move very slowly through these things. And the longer they're there, they have more impact on the world, because they really dig into a certain area, and then that planet and the qualities that it has will be operating through that range of the zodiac for a long period of time. Like Pluto's been in Capricorn for 13, 14 years, and so that energy of that planet through that sign has been really strong through there, and because it's stayed there, while like the sun's going around each month, it's in a new sign, right? But Pluto's spending a lot more than a decade in this one sign of Capricorn, and then the energy of Pluto, which is like extreme concentration and has a lot of intense, very powerful effect on the economy it's coming through this Capricorn thing. I mean, I'm using that as an example, but my intuitively, my awareness is kind of already pushed in that direction to where I can kind of feel bigger trends and things, you know. So you know, this decade ahead of us is basically the end of the world. Sorry guys, don't mean to scare anybody, but it is. It doesn't mean that the world won't go on. It's just all of the anxieties about the apocalypse and, you know, the degree, the extent to which humanity is out of balance with the planet is going to be addressed a lot more directly this decade. So we're really going to be looking at some major changes, to the extent that, you know, when we get to the other end of it, we're 2 years in, right, to this decade, 22. When we get to 2030, it, you know, the world may look physically, may look
not recognize it.
Yeah, it may be almost unrecognizable. I think certain things will be almost totally unrecognizable. I think this country, America, where we are, United States, is going to be almost unrecognizable. I think it is going to completely collapse and turn into something we never thought possible. It's
funny because I was talking to somebody else about that, but I don't remember doing this. But like when I was 24, I like had this dream about how America split into 5 different countries. We didn't stay a union. Mm-hmm. And I woke up and I called my cousin and I was like, hey, the country breaks up into 5 different countries. Mm-hmm. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, I'm just telling you, write this down. And like I can't remember, and I was like, and listen, let me tell you something. It happens in 2025. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, okay.
You may be exactly right.
And I was like, yeah. And I don't remember the regions that I laid out for her, mm-hmm. but I was like, okay, I'm going back to bed. And like, I don't even remember doing that. And I don't even remember the dream, but in 2016, that would have been 10 years before that or something. Like she called me and she was like, do you remember that dream you had that you made me like write down or something? I was like, no, which one? What are you talking about? And she was like, the one where America is going to break up into 5 parts. I was like, I don't remember that. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that vaguely. And she goes, I think about that a lot. Like, I think you might've been right. And I was like, yeah. I didn't mean to be right. I'm like, well, probably, maybe not. I don't know.
I think you may be exactly right, or very close to literally exactly right. I mean, it's there's a lot of different stuff. This is a weird part of it,
because that's like,
well, okay, let me just I'll try to break this down. So it's a little hard for me to this is the area of my life it's a little hard for me to separate the stuff that's purely intuitive, because this is psychic kindergarten. Okay, what I learned was called psychic kindergarten, which means that the awareness is simple. It comes in bite-sized segments that are easy to digest. It's not a big sophisto contest, you know, where you prove how smart you are and all that kind of stuff. It's not super complicated. The idea is, it's like, you know, I think of being psychic. I think of the psychic training and doing readings as being a lot closer to like playing sports, like at a not very competitive level. Like you're at a picnic and you play baseball or volleyball or something like that.
Yeah.
That's closer to what it's like. It's like there's a little bit of some ground rules, and what you're expected to do is pretty basic, and you can take it to a really high level if you want to, right? But you can also play it on a very rudimentary level. It's just fun. But your training, you doing it every day, certainly makes it easier for you to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry taking this. This is a little big digression, but I just wanted to say that it's that. So when I'm doing the astrology stuff, I'm doing much more analytic and intellectual things, where I'm like really digging into learning about new planets, because there were a lot of new planets that were discovered beyond Pluto, right, that never really get talked about. But there was
one, and you guys can go look at our other interview, because he talks very deeply about Eris.
Yeah, and I hope we get, at some point I want to circle back to it with you when you're ready and you want to do it, because I I had kind of laid off of that for a long time, and now I'm more hot onto it since we did you kind of reawoke all my shit, honestly. I was very depressed. I was kind of ready to give it all up. I was like, I got to go get a job. It's like, they were hiring a lot of people, last year, right?
Uh-huh.
It was like unemployment was like down like to this or something, and you could walk out of your door and get a job really easily. I was like, what am I doing all this work for? Nobody cares. And then we did that first interview, and people were like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and it sort of sparked it back up. So anyway, yeah, there were these planets that were discovered beyond Pluto, and when we discover the planet, it shifts the energy. It changes reality because it sort of creates this weird thing. It was already there having an effect before, but then when people discover it, it kind of opens the door to something else. So we've got these new levels of awareness, and what they are is actually huge evolutionary leaps forward, very positive things, that opportunities for awareness on the planet for the living beings. Primarily, human beings are kind of the alphas. We're calling the shot on the we're in charge of it, right? Obviously, right. There's no other animal that is planet. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yes. So there's an opportunity to kind of jump up to these higher levels of awareness, and this has been true since the 18th century, late 18th century, when Uranus was discovered. Each time these new planets are discovered that we find that are out there, brings with us these new frequencies of awareness. So what happened is that in the first decade of this century, between about 2000 to 2007, there was this wave where they just discovered one after the other, after the other, after the other. And there was like maybe a dozen sort of substantial discoveries of little planets. They call them dwarf planets. They're little ones.
Which is how Pluto got demoted from a planet to a, what do they call it? An what do they call them? Exoplanets? Or they're not really, or not exoplanet. They call them.
They're dwarf planets.
Dwarf planets. Okay.
Yeah, they call them dwarf planets. So Pluto became a dwarf planet, and that's why we stopped talking about it, is because it's, in theory, yeah, it doesn't count. And then Eris was the one that's the same size as Pluto. Anyway, so we can study things. You can get into some really, bless you. We can get into some really deep analytic things to explain how these things are working, and it becomes a language to sort of frame the intuitive and break it down. And you have to use your intuition to feel the energy. That's why people don't have to believe in astrology, right? They can just shut their intuition off and say, oh, this my sign has nothing to do with who I am, right? There's lots of people that think that. You can look at them and it's very obvious, but you have to be able to acknowledge something intangible to be able to work with that. So it's sort of in between. It's a very intellectual pursuit, but it's not purely intuitive. Like when I read people, they say their name, that's it, and I have my eyes shut, and then I just start talking. So I don't have any background information about the person when I first read them, unless I already knew them. But most of the people I encounter, the first time I'm meeting them, I'm reading them. So they don't say why they're there. They don't say anything about their background. And I'll read them for like a half hour, and then get to a point where I run out of stuff that's coming really easily. And then I let them ask questions about whatever they brought to the reading, or something I said, or anything, as long as it relates to them in some way. So that initial half hour, it's like leaping into a void, basically, because I could be telling him something that's absolutely doesn't relate to him in any way. Theoretically, it could be totally wrong, everything I'm saying, because I have no guide. I don't know anything about their family. I don't know their job. I don't know shit. And I'll just start going and going and going, and it starts to sometimes get fairly detailed, to where I'm really committing to things like, you're going to sign a contract next month, and you're separating from your husband and stuff like that, right. And I don't know the person at all. So it's like,
for me, described people very physically, like they'll have blue eyes with this thing and with the, very like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes
this person's going to have this. He's going to be a skinny guy with this and glasses, and this, and then this one's, you're like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Very specific.
Yeah. Occasionally with the physical appearance, I'm not batting 1,000 on physical appearance. It's hit or miss with the physical appearance, but with the context of the actions or the deeper realities of things that are happening, I'm pretty consistent.
Mm.
But my point is that I don't know why I'm seeing those things. It's really my intuition is guiding me. The pictures the person's giving me are guiding me. So I'm just going one after the other. And it's kind of like, it's like going through a flip book or a slideshow, or, you know, just going from one image to the next. If you're scrolling, basically, it's just, you know, I'll see one thing, talk about it, another thing pops up, where I'll start talking about it, and then I'll start getting a clearer picture, getting more focused as I'm talking about it. So that's just purely intuitive. I mean, there's no explanation for that. So like, I've gotten used to it at this point, that I'll go for that initial half hour, and then I'll finish that, and I'll open my eyes and go, okay, so, you know, what do you want to talk about? And usually the things that are just the most wacky out there things, like I'll read past lives of people, and I'll get into these very specific sort of dramas that are going on in a past life. And then I'll see like what's going on with that, like how it relates to the present. And then there'll be like a thing about how it relates to the present. Sometimes it's really clear how it relates to the present. And sometimes when I go to look at like how it applies to the present, it sort of touches off a whole other story, you know, that I'll start telling somebody about something that's happening in present time in their life, you know. And I get used to finding out that I'm usually right. You know, it's pretty weird. I mean,
I told you,
yeah,
Nukes, and then you were like, no. And then now you tell me Nukes, and I'm like, no.
I think my memory is that I basically told you I didn't really want to think about it.
Yeah.
When you mentioned Nukes, I was like, I'm not seeing it, but I don't think I want to see it either. That was my memory. Maybe I
don't know. I don't know. Basically, we're just.
I do remember you saying
that.
Yeah, because I think I wasn't. I think either in that moment I might have said it, but I do remember kind of copping to it with you after you said that, and I like didn't have anything. I was like, I probably don't want to see it, you know, because I don't want to think about it. But the more I'm looking at the astrology with Haumea, which is one of the new planets that was found in 2004, the likelihood of a nuke going off, the likelihood of a nuclear war on some level is very high. And I don't like saying that because I'm not.
I don't either. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy or something. It's like
no, I don't think so. This is not. I'm not coming at it from that standpoint. So I got to disagree with you there, because sometimes people come. I've heard that from people. Okay.
Right.
And I want to just point out, like when COVID was beginning, I was visiting a friend of mine in Texas in January of 2020.
Okay.
And the news first came on about Wuhan. We were looking probably on YouTube. The moment I saw it, I said, oh man, this is definitely going to be here very soon. And it's going to completely upend everything for a long time. And she was like, kind of had that reaction, like, don't, you know, you don't try
say
to,
it. Right.
Yeah, don't try to put that on it. We've seen, you know, they've seen many different things come and go. This is just this week's thing that they're trying to scare us with. And I was like,
I kind of felt that way too.
And I was like,
it was going to be what it is.
I was looking at it. I was like, nah, this is going to be the next couple of years at least. And because it, you know, part of it was common sense. It's, you use all your levels of awareness, right? So if your common sense is telling you something, pay attention to it. If your intellect is telling you something that really feels right when you're grounded in your body, vibrationally it feels right, pay attention to it. You know, don't get stuck like you won't use these other abilities. But basically when I looked at that, you know, I said, the point is, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy where you get a negative mindset. And I've certainly been guilty of that in my life. I mean, there's times where I've gotten really depressed and it hasn't been good for me. And usually I haven't been reading, I haven't been meditating, because meditating will pull you out of it. You know, meditating will pull you out of a funk, for sure.
It will.
Yeah, if you can get yourself
when I get into like these dark nights of the soul thing where I'm just like, fuck everything. I definitely know that I have to sit down and meditate.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Going back to nukes. And
Okay, let's go back to nukes. Okay, back to nukes. The astrology is telling me that the nukes thing is unfortunately what I'll say is that the danger is extremely high. And while I'll explain it to you very quickly, is that Haumea, which is a new planet, I mean, it doesn't mean that it wasn't there, but it was discovered in 2004. Okay, and then it was conjunct with Pluto and the sun when the atom bombs were dropped at the end of World War II. Okay, so that means that the sun and Pluto and Haumea all were lined up in the same place, basically, when the bombs were dropped. If you take the two bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, together, and you average them, which is you make a composite, which you can do with two different charts, and then you average the two things together. So you've got these events that are basically 5 days apart or something, and then you average them together. Then it becomes the sun and the moon and Pluto and Haumea all together at exactly the same place. So it's the faster moving inner planets will trigger things when they contact the outer ones. That's a kind of a well-known game in astrology. So with Pluto and Haumea together in the same place, that's when we got the bombs got dropped for the first time. So Pluto is all about quantum physics is a thing that came to us when Pluto was discovered. Around that time was when quantum physics became the dominant, the standard model of physics, which is a quantum physics based thing, became the model of reality when Pluto was discovered. So that whole thing of human beings learning how to split the atom and get the energy out of it was a Pluto thing. And with Haumea, the mutative impact of it was Haumea. Okay. The changes, the transformation. So these two planets have been stuck together when they were around the time that Pluto was discovered. And we didn't know about Haumea until very recently. And there's really no attention on it. There's almost nobody. So there's an astrologer named Sue Kent who studies it. And she has pretty good interpretations of it in some ways. And I've owe her a little bit for Haumea, but I've sort of been working more with it on my own. And I think it's a planet that really deals with, it's here to show people that we're not the center of everything. It's here to show us that we're part of a continuum of life, that we had a beginning.
Because one of my friends said it was about childbirth or
don't worry. Yeah. Ignore. Don't worry about any of that. Okay, because it has a role because it's a fertility goddess. But the name of the goddess or god that the planet's named after isn't really the same thing as the identity of the planet. It gives you a little bit of a way into it, but it's not really the same thing. So like Jupiter in astrology is actually very different from Jupiter in mythology. Okay. There's a little bit of overlap. There's a reason that they have a name in common, but it's not a solid 100% lineup. So Haumea is very much about life energy and birthing new things, but it also is about creative destruction.
So when does that all line up again?
Well, what they're doing is they're squaring. So they're in a 90-degree angle, which is very stressful. And they're doing that for the first time exact. They're doing it right now, but they're going like 100% exact to the minute in May of this year. And it actually, they're each at the end of a sign, and then they move into a new sign and they stay in square, and then they go exact many more times, like maybe could be half a dozen more times for the rest of the decade. So it's very.
So it's not the exact same alignment as World War II, but it's curious enough to pay attention.
Yeah. We're getting into stuff that we can probably we'll talk about it here just because we're here, because you and I are having a conversation, so we'll let it go. Like, I mean, it's called a lunation. So when you have two things that are moving together and forming geometric configurations with each other.
Okay.
there's what's called a lunation. So if you think of the moon, we think of the moon, we keep track of the new moon and the full moon, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
really easy to do. Like there's a lot of people that are aware of that,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
we actually are having the full moon
Right now, as we're doing this.
in
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be exact in like less than 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, we're there. And so the full moon has a lot of energy, the new moon has a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
That new moon is, the new moon is a conjunction. It's the moon and sun come together in the same place. That's why we can't see it, is because
Right.
the moon can't be seen during the daylight. So those
And then is the full moon a square?
no, the full moon is in opposition. It's 180 degrees.
Oh,
So
okay.
that means that
So,
the moon is opposite the sun. That's why we're seeing the whole thing, is because the light of the sun is falling evenly on the whole surface of the moon. Now the half moons, right, or in between, those are the squares. So
right.
we don't necessarily in this society pay very much attention to them, but if you're studying the tides and stuff, it becomes pretty significant, because you can get some pretty big tidal changes between high tide and low tide during the half moons.
Okay.
So anyway, half moons are that is 90 degrees. So you can go, there's four
Right.
things, right? So if you look at all those things together, that's called a grand cross. There's this one position that's the conjunction, there's the opposition, and there's the two squares. So they're making an X. And so these planets move extremely slowly. The conjunctions between Haumea and Pluto went on for a very long time. I was really shocked when I went back to look at it, that the planetary motion between the two of them is very strange. It's unlike anything I've seen before for various reasons. We could go into it. I know it's not necessarily that interesting, or it could be in the right context, but we're getting way off of stuff. I'll just say that there's a possibility that the whole entire thing of learning how to split the atom open was like a 100 some year process that might have been guided by Pluto and Haumea being together, because they matched up in different signs over a long period of time. Very strange. I've never seen anything like it, okay, in all my study of astrology, because these planets are really far out, and then they have orbits that are pretty close together in terms of proportionately, they're very close together. So Pluto's orbit is like 250 years, and then a little bit shy of 250 years, and then Haumea's is a little shy of 290 years. It's almost the same, but they're these little things, and they're really, really far apart.
Yeah.
So they stay in some really bad angles or good angles for a long time. So anyway, so I'm sorry. I know this is really different than what we were talking about. It's kind of like a
No,
totally different.
it's fine, but like I mean,
Yeah.
it's I just kind of can you know like details about where so that you're not there? Or does it not really matter because it's nuclear fallout?
I think it's not going to matter, because I think that's the whole point, is people are so okay, you really want to know what I think?
I really
Okay,
know.
now we'll get back to the psychic, okay, which is that energetically, somehow people have gotten into a state where they're in agreement to a nuclear bomb going off. So you can kind of feel people not wanting to pay attention to it. They don't want to feel like they're responsible for it. They hear about the kind of concerns that people had in the past about nuclear weapons and nuclear war, and it's not moving them to action. So you can see how people have gone into agreement to it, that they're like going, okay. They don't want to know. There's a big difference between big difference between a self-fulfilling prophecy that's negative and a person willfully not wanting to know. Okay. So like when I was in Texas with my friend and we're looking at the pictures from Wuhan, right away I'm seeing, okay, this is coming here very soon, and it's going to be changing life in America for sure. And who knows? I mean, it's so big. It's like, okay, we'll see what happens. And when she was like, no. See, that's a person not wanting to face it. You don't want to face it. Like when you said nukes the first time, and I was probably like, nah, yeah, that's because I didn't want to look at it. So like a little while after we had that, yeah, I thought it might have been just a moment after you said it, but it might have been a day or two after you said it, where I was like, oh man, I was probably just didn't want to see it. And Nikki was saying, she was saying hello to something I just didn't want to see, you know. And certainly now I'm seeing, I mean, it's it is so demented. The way that the leadership of this country is behaving right now is so demented. I've never seen anything like it in my life. The only thing I can compare it to, only thing I could compare it to is Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
It is so demented. I mean, it's just, I can't believe the stuff I'm hearing and seeing from the leadership, because it's just
It's
so,
like unexcusable, like that they're
it's,
even still in office, or that any, like that it's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. But I mean, there's,
no.
you
But
know,
our the way our whole entire system is running, not even just one party or another party, the way that it's been able to get this far spiraled out of control, and they're so removed. Like we have basically a bunch of geriatric people, like, or I don't know,
yeah.
whatever's going up, but we have to we have to start over anyway with.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll take it to, okay, we'll take it to astrology for a minute, because this will take you into why I want to talk about these things so much, is because there's what's actually the reason that stuff is like this, in my opinion, is that we're mentally stuck on the paradigm that's been set by Pluto, and we're trying to break through it. But Pluto's nature as a planet, it holds on and it won't let go of power. So it's very different than any of the other planets. The other planets don't really have this quality. That's the quality that it has, is it fixates and it holds on to power. So when our awareness was shifting from like Saturn to Uranus to Neptune, it was really pretty smooth, because those planets don't have that quality. They don't have that energy, this obsessive, fixating quality, but Pluto really does. And so the people who are in power when Pluto was big, which is the United States, when Pluto was the furthest thing out, it was discovered here in America. It was an American thing, big deal. American hegemony kind of spiked up and we became number one when Pluto was discovered. So now that time is over.
Yeah.
So that's a really hard thing to face, because these other things have been discovered that are out there beyond Pluto. And there's a lot of new age movements that have a whole cosmology that's based on Pluto being the ultimate thing and the ultimate expression, and like the final expression of awareness. And all it is that the people didn't know when they were making their construct. They didn't realize that these other things other stuff was going to be found. And so it's very hard. There's just a lot of attachment to it. And our government is somehow it profoundly somehow locked up with Pluto in this weird way. So they're going to want to take the whole world down before they let go of before they let go of being number one. And it's really crazy. I mean, it's really insane. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. China is very clearly going to be the number one country. And that is something, those are the forces of history. That has nothing to do with any kind of plan that any individual person has, nothing to do with any kind of strategic thing that's happening. I mean, there's reasons you could explain that in terms of policy, or individual politicians making this or that decision, but it's something that's
saying it's like this is its destiny to be.
It's fated. It's fated to happen. It's fated to happen. Yeah, and then there's things I could explain astrologically why that's true. At some point, if you wanted to, we could get into that. But the point is that it's happening, and it's just this fucking planet, man. Pluto is a rascal. It just does not like letting go of anything. It really, really likes keeping things. It has a lot of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean it's more like my. Well, first of all, I like also play around with, like, I don't believe anything, right? Like I told you, like I was like, I don't even think nukes are real, probably. And I'm at a point where I think most of history is fabricated, or like I'm like very black pilled in a lot of ways. And sometimes I come out of that phase and I go in and out of this. I don't know how, like, what'll stay or what won't stay. But I will say that, like, regardless of what's really gone on in our past or hasn't, we have had start overs more than once. I mean, like, you can see that in whatever, no matter if we know how to date rocks or not, or whether, I mean, we've seen
Resets.
resets. We have had global resets. They're very evident in whatever kind of records that we do have. The rocks don't lie to you. We've had resets. I fear I'm going to live through another one. And my thing is like, I kind of start thinking about like, you know, like maybe I want to be at the epicenter of the nuke. I don't know. Or if
Mhm.
I'm not, like what do you do if you're not? Like how do you survive? Like what do you do? Like how do you get it going?
We're
I
gonna
don't know.
find out.
Yeah.
We're gonna find out. I at this point, I mean, I hate to say it, but at this point, I would be, I would really be surprised if there weren't at least one explosion. My expectation, based on everything that I've seen, is that it's probably going to be our fault, and we're going to try to put it off on somebody else.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it's all been going. Is, there's the whole, we've heard these stories over and over again. They talk about how there's this one guy running a country and he's crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how many times have we heard that? And
Right now it's Putin.
right. There's a
Hitler
rotating
used to
villain.
be this. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Ayatollah Khomeini, Adolf Hitler,
Yeah.
Joseph Stalin, right?
By the way, I read Gaddafi's The Green Book. Have you ever read that?
Sorry.
It's
No.
amazing. It's like I don't know if I have it
He
around
was
here.
doing some things which were basically were kind of okay.
No, it's amazing. Everybody should read that if you can get a hold of it.
What's true is that everybody who ends up in power, maybe there's some exceptions somewhere, but pretty much as a rule, everybody who ends up in power like that, like the leader of a country, right, is a person with a really big ego, and they've got a shadow, and they've got certain things about them which you could say which will make them look like a bad person. Okay, so they could blow that up and make anybody look terrible because there's so many things that a person has to do before they get to that place.
right.
Even if they have a good vision for their country or their people, even if they have an altruistic vision. I mean, even Martin Luther King, right? He cheated on his wife, and you could make a big deal that
Right.
that he was sleeping with all these other women. Okay, if you really want to make that the basis that you judge a person on, and throw away all the things that he did for bringing people's consciousness
Awareness
to racial equality on a mass level, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. So you could find people and start to magnify things about what they're doing and make them look like terrible people. Anyway, there's always this narrative that there's this one crazy guy and we've got to stop him. And you've got to be willfully naive. You have to want to believe in the fairy tale and not want to see reality to buy into that shit, because it's just so stupid. I mean, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It can't be what's happening, right?
So you think the first nuke's going to go off in May or something's going to
Well, I'm saying that the first time that they square exactly is in May. That doesn't necessarily dictate it. Okay, remember what I said when we did our last interview, which is October 5th? And I said that the Eris and Pluto were squaring for the last time. Exact.
Okay.
So they're still in a square. They're 4 degrees out from being in a perfect square. And they're moving further apart.
But they're moving away. Yeah.
They're separating, they're moving further apart. But on the day we did that, was like the day before or the day after or the day of the last exact square. And that was a thing that lasted for like 2 years. That there were like 5, maybe a little bit more than 2 years, I don't remember, but there were 5 exact squares. Okay, so it went forward and backward and forward and backward and forward. Okay, so that whole thing corresponded exactly to all the panic about COVID and all the fucked up rules about what people had to do in order to relate to each other, all the social restrictions, right? Because that was Pluto's a fucker.
Yeah,
okay?
that's interesting, because that was right when in fact, I had just gotten informed that I had to be vaccinated or I was going to be fired. Like
right.
on, I think October 1st or
Yeah.
or 4th, maybe October
Right.
4th or something. And
Right.
then yeah, you know, like, and so I was literally having to rethink a career.
But see, but I didn't even think I could be right when I said that, but you can see that the energy's dissipated pretty significantly since then.
Yeah, like now, but it all actually fell apart by the beginning of December, like, because I, well, actually no, it actually fell apart in November because
Yeah.
I thought that my Thanksgiving trip I called in sick for, because I
Yeah.
thought that I was going to be fired the day after I got back from Thanksgiving, so I was like, fuck off, because I'm
Yeah.
not taking it, so you just fire me. And they dropped it like at the 12th hour.
Right. I mean, it's weird because remember I gave that prediction when we did the astrology, and I was like, rationally, I can't really explain how that's true, but it has to be true that we're getting to the end of all the fucked up rules. Okay. I mean, there's going to be more, but they're going to be different because
For different things too. Right now, there's
it's
going to be climate change lockdown or something, or
we could see that to really get into it is like a whole, bless you, it's like a whole other,
Thanks.
it's a whole other thing. We could talk about Eris and Haumea and Pluto. We could have like a 2-hour thing about Eris and Haumea and Pluto and my predictions for the future and analysis of what has been happening. I mean, because there's a lot of different levels to it, but the confusion and the anxiety about how people are supposed to relate to each other, that was the big thing with Eris Pluto square, was that the restrictions brought in this thing which fucked up people's relationships, whether it was love relationships,
Yeah.
work relationships, friend relationships, family relationships.
Right. Okay, Val, so tell us where people can find you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you can find me at Distance Between Planets.
With all threes.
There's 2 different ones. So I've made it really confusing. So there's Distance Between Planets written normally, distancebetweenplanets.com, which is the website which I haven't really done anything with.
But
yet.
that's where you can get a hold of you to figure out how to.
Yeah, and then there's Distance Between Planets with all the E's as threes.
And that's your Instagram.
Yeah. Why don't we say for right now, it's Distance Between Planets with all the E's as threes. That's my one, which is the astrology one, and I'll talk occasionally about the psychic stuff. And then there's Distance Between Planets, just written out with the E's as
.com, which will have your email. That's how they can get a contact.
Yeah. That's
so
the home
watch
base
his videos on Instagram, and if you want a reading from him or if you want to contact him, go to Distance Between Planets, spelled like it sounds. I'll put it here.
Yeah, right now we can go to either one. If you want to reach me at Instagram, that's fine.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
We'll talk again.
It was really fun too. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Bye.
Take it easy.